I just wanted to share with you guys what I read in the month of February. So here is my reading journal spread. It's not fully filled out, but I will go ahead and tell you what I read. Looks like I read 11 books this month, which is great because I'm continually wanting to read a little less than last year, and I think that's about on par or a little under, so we are doing good there. I read another Mrs. Jeffries. Mrs. Jeffries Stands Corrected. This one and if you know Mrs. Jeffries, the Mrs. Jeffries series, she is a house servant, kind of in charge of the house staff of a local police inspector. And he is a mediocre inspector at best, and so the house staff try to help him solve his murder cases under the radar, so he doesn't know that he's actually being assisted in the case. And for this one, the twist on this story is the inspector decides he's not even gonna talk to anybody about it. He's just gonna do it all in his head, which, I mean, that's how the house staff get information from him, by just like, oh, what's your case about? And, you know, and then he'll share a little bit about his case, not really understanding that they're helping him. And so now he's just like, I want to do this case totally in my head, which leaves the house staff like completely at a loss, because they're like, how are we going to help him if we don't know anything about the case? And I really like that book. The next book I read was The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. This is a classic horror thriller, I would say. Essentially, this man finds his way on an island that he didn't know existed, and then slowly but surely he's seeing creatures or beings that he doesn't believe exist, but how is he seeing them? And yeah, some of them are pretty intense and scary, so I'll leave it there. There is like more develops, but it's such a short book that I don't want to say too much. So I didn't love this one. I didn't hate it. There was some language in it. You can read my review on Goodreads. But yeah, that's how this one went. Then I read Cloak of Scarlet, which is book 5 in the Dark Tales by Melanie Dickerson. Usually I love Melanie Dickerson books, but I feel like, I don't know if I'm just getting older, or if I'm just reading more things that's changing my outlook on books, or if it just happens to be a couple of books that I've read from her that maybe weren't her best. I don't know what it is, but this one I gave a 3.75, which is on the lower end of my rating for Melanie Dickerson. So I guess my main issue for this one was I just didn't really like the main female character. I just felt like she was fairly hypocritical in the way she was judging people. So, because it seemed like she would do the same thing. So anyway, there's that one. 3.75 is in no way a poor rating for me, but it is lower for Melanie Dickerson for me. The next book I read, which was great, was Spellslinger by Sebastian de Castell. So this is one of those instances, it happens occasionally, where I hear about a book, I think I'm gonna really like this book, I put it off and I put it off, and I don't know why I put it off. And then when I read it, I actually really like this book. So I'm super excited to get to the rest of the series. So this book is definitely magical high fantasy and not a Christian book, so keep that in mind. There's magic and spells and this old lady who talks about her deck of cards, which is not a tarot deck, so don't be put off for that. It is like a playing deck, but they're magical for her, I guess. So yeah, do with that information what you will, but I really enjoyed the ride watching this teenage boy, Kellen, where he is supposed to have this power according to his like lineage, but he doesn't have this power, and it should have shown up by now, by his 16th birthday, and it has not. So that leads him on to a magical adventure. The next book I read was Secrets, Lies, and Alibis by Patricia H. Rushford. This one I rated a 4-star. I remember really enjoying this one when I first read it in I can't remember what year. It was a few years ago, maybe 2020, maybe? But anyway, this is a Christian crime-solving story. So this one starts off with a really gripping, intense first chapter, like, whoa. It doesn't ever reach that level of intensity after that, but yeah, it's quite borderline graphic, I dare say. But I really enjoyed, I guess, the crime-solving aspect of it. So I would recommend that one. So after I read that one, I read the second one, which was Deadfall by Patricia H. Rushford. Same series. This one I gave a 3.75. It follows the same cast of, or the same main character who is the investigator, and I think I like him. I don't know. I think he's one of those characters that kind of grows on you. So anyway, I read the second one, gave it 3.75, a little less than the first one, but also fairly enjoyable, so there's that. I also read Oath of the Brotherhood, which is book 1 of the Song of Shira by C.E. Laureano, Carlos Laureano, which is right here. I read this book. It was a reread. My first read was a 5-star. I can't remember what year, but this year I gave it, or yeah, well, whatever. This time around I gave it a 4.5 star, so a little less than my first read, but I still really enjoy it. This one is Christian fantasy, so our main character has actually, he's the son of royalty, but he's actually been raised by a foster family, and when he comes of age, he's brought back to his royal parents or his father. I can't remember anything about his mom. I can't remember if she like passed away or something. But anyway, and his father is completely disappointed with how the foster family raised him, not at all like he was anticipating. So he actually like almost banishes him or sends him to a neighboring kingdom, rival kingdom, as sort of like a hostage in the political situation that's going on here. So yeah, then he spends a few years there. I would say like a Christian kingdom, but like the faith, the religion in this world is meant to be, I think, an allegory of like the real world here. That their God is come to you, which I don't like that name. It just makes me think of come to you, and I just feel like, I don't know, it just bothers me. It's just one of those little pet peeves, but anyway, I'm convoluting the story. It's a great fantasy, and so I did go ahead and read the second one, Beneath the Forsaken City, which I also gave a 4-star, and just continues the story, so I really like that one. I will go ahead and mention a DNF, maybe a couple, my only 2 DNFs, were House of Roots and Ruin, which is book 2 of the Sisters of the Salt by Erin A. Craig. I read the first one a few years ago, and it's a mainstream YA horror type retelling thriller book. And I liked a lot of that book. Some things I didn't really care for, but anyway, so I thought I would try the second one, and I was enjoying it for the most part. Like the storytelling, it was pretty decent. However, at 40%, our main character, who has been somewhat sheltered, reads, is it reads? No, there's a picture, a very sexually explicit picture in the book that she comes across, and then it is narrated, or it's described in detail, this image that she stumbles upon. So I just DNF'd it there because I didn't like that. The next one was Maisie Dobbs, book number 1. I DNF'd at 6%, which is pretty early on, But when you're bored, you're bored. So time to call it and move on. The next one I read was Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. I was reading a bunch of these for the February readathon that a couple of the ladies that I'll leave in the description below that they were hosting this month. So I had a hard time rating this one because it is YA, mainstream fantasy, but there's like a lot of sorcery in it, and like they talk about demons, and even though I know they're not like our real world demons, they're more so like beasts that they just call demons. There's just so much talk of that it just wasn't pleasant to continually hear all the time. Like if they had called them beasts, it would be so much better. But anyway, I gave that one a 2.75. The story itself was good, but there was just so much of that other stuff that So then I moved on to Brentwood's Ward by Michelle Greep, and I really love Michelle Greep's writing. She writes historical, I think that's all she writes. I've never read anything that's different, but I gave this one a 3-star. This is more of a historical romance maybe, but there is some like mystery element to it because this very, very wealthy man hires this guy who's desperately needing some money to help his ailing sister. He hires him to watch over his daughter while he's abroad for business, and he only has one daughter, and she's a bit of a troublemaker, finds herself into trouble a lot, so he just needs someone to kind of just watch her. She is an adult, but you know, she could use a guardian. So he hires this guy, and while she's not impressed that she has to have like a shadow wherever she goes, so be it. And then her uncle, who's not actually her uncle, it's not a spoiler, then I read Fantasties by George MacDonald. George MacDonald wrote one of my favorite middle grade books ever, The Princess and the Goblin. So I had high expectations, thinking he might be a new favorite author like Tolkien, because he is very often compared to Tolkien. So yeah, I had really high expectations for this one. This one is a adult fairy story, in that there was around that time there was a bunch of stigma around fairy tales being only for children, and a lot of these guys like Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and Fantasties were trying to, George MacDonald, were trying to like contradict that narrative and be like, actually fairy tales are for adults too. So anyway, I was really looking forward to this one, but I gave it a 3-star, and I don't know if I just need to read it with my eyeballs instead of my earballs, because I feel like there was potential, but was it just too confusing? A lot of the time my mind was wandering because I just could not keep focused on what was happening. This man who doesn't really believe that fairies exist or fairy worlds exist is transported into fairyland and is experiencing all that fairyland has to offer, and ends up falling in love in fairyland. And yeah, it's a bit of a miss for me. I think the 3-star is just because I just have a hard time giving it any lower, because he is an author that wrote one of my favorite middle grades, and I still have high hopes for his writing going forward. I don't know, it's one of those things. So let me know if you've read Fantasties and what you think of it in the comments below. And then the last book I read which was a great way to end the month, was The Mermaid's Tale by L.E. Richmond. This one I gave a 4.5, and one thing I will say, it's written in first person present tense, which I actually very much don't like. Very passionately do not like first person present tense. And this book is written that way. I listened to it in audiobook because of that, and I just love the story. Like, it has touches of the Disney classic mermaid story in it, so it's a bit of a retelling, but I just, like, there were so many scenes actually underwater, interacting with like sea creatures and you know, swimming away, or like, it was just like, the majority of this book is actually set underwater, and I feel like books don't do that these days. If a mermaid book is written, I feel like it's set out of water because, oh, the mermaid got legs or something, you know, like, I don't know. But it was such a great time under the actual water, so high points for that. And it was a great way to end the month. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. But a few highlights, I reread a few books, which was really cool. Something I've been wanting to do this year. And so yeah, that's how my February was. Let me know what you read in February and maybe some of your favorite books from February. Yeah, let's chat books in the comments below, and I hope you have a lovely day. Bye!